Hey guys, welcome back to another vlog. Today I want to talk about something that I feel like does not get talked nearly enough, and that is beast-proofing your bow setup. Let's go take a look at what I do. So this is my setup. This is a Bear Approach. I've had it for a little over a year now, and I got it pretty well fine-tuned at how I want it. And I've had some really bad experiences in the past with bows during hunting situations, and so there's a really good reason that I do everything I do to make sure that that bow always performs when it needs to. So let's get into it. So this may be an obvious one, and I think a lot of people do this, but I put stealth strips everywhere on my rest. Anywhere that an arrow could potentially ding against my riser is all stealth stripped up. The inside of my vapor trail rest here is all stealth stripped up. The sides of my rest, in case the arrow would come through here and hit, is all stealth stripped up. There's absolutely no way my arrow should ever make any noise in this rest at all. So now let's talk about stabilizers. Stabilizers drive me absolutely nuts. I used to be the guy that shot the 10-inch stabilizer up front with a back bar running off the back, and kind of thought it was cool. And 3 years ago on an elk hunt, I drew back with that type of setup to shoot a cow elk, and I heard a clink, and I looked down, and the back bar was laying in between my cables on my bow. It had came loose in the 7 days I was out in the backcountry, and when I drew back, it flopped down, and there was no way I could shoot. It would have jerked my bow everywhere. I tore that sucker off there and put it in my pack, and I never used one again. And now I've even went to I don't use a front bar either. I don't feel like 40 yards and in I really need it at all. And usually I'm shooting 20 to 30 yards, if not closer. So I just put this little, it's a limb saver, little dampener on there just to maybe reduce vibration a little bit. Okay, another point. These rods on these dampeners are carbon fiber. These things, sometimes the screws in the back will break these and they'll come loose. I've had that happen to me before, or I'll pick a bow up in the shop. I don't know if you've ever done that. And these are actually a little bit loose. What I do is, you can see the residue there a little bit. I actually put a little bit of epoxy inside that bar so it cannot come loose. It's just a 2-part epoxy. That seems to work really well. I do the exact same thing with my cable guide here, my cable rod. I put epoxy and epoxy that in. A lot of competitive archers do that also. I just think that's really important. All these things here, they're very vulnerable. They can break. Like I said, some of them are made of some type of a steel. Some of them are carbon fiber, so you just got to kind of see what you got there. And I just don't trust the inset screw. It could break that carbon fiber. As you guys know, pressure this way on carbon is not very strong, so that's why I epoxy those in. This is the epoxy I used. I don't know, it's just it's PC super epoxy. I think about anything will work. I also don't shoot a wrist rocket anymore. I shoot this thumb button release. The reason I went away from a wrist rocket, a couple things I shoot better with this one. Another thing is I don't like that wrist rocket clinking around on my wrist and on my stand and everything else. This I just clip on my D-loop, and then I just let it hang on the bow. Kind of a foolproof system. The only thing I worry about sometimes if I would accidentally hit the trigger and it would fall to the ground. So I simply just, if you can imagine it being in the tree, and then I hang the hangs there just like that. So I'm ready to go. I just grab the release and go. So something else I'm updating this year. Haven't done it yet, but I'm getting a new sight. My pet peeve is to have a good quality sight, and I kind of failed with that this year. There's nothing wrong with this sight. It's a decent sight, but this housing isn't metal. It's some kind of a composite, and actually, I don't know if you can hear that vibration. That's that housing, the sight housing here. So I'm going to update to that B3 sight, the Hunter sight. It's all metal. And I also don't need that many pins. There's 5 pins there. I think I'm going to go with a 4-pin sight. And then just run that for next year. So I'll do a little video when I get that new sight. But check your sight. Make sure you're happy with the quality of it. These things break. You know, this plastic isn't, you can see it has a lot of give there. Just don't care for this sight at all. So this topic is a little controversial. And I'm not bringing it up to be controversial, just my opinion. I like to use fixed blade broadheads now. I used mechanicals in the past and just had some kind of a streak of bad luck with them. So the last 4 years probably I've used some type of a fixed blade. A lot of that's because I was shooting a longbow, but I've also shot it out of my compound. This is the Magnus Hornet. It's 125 grain, and I have a 100 grain insert in the arrow there. The reasons I don't like mechanicals, some of the ones I've had in the past, they'll come loose in my quiver. I'll look at the end of my arrow, and one of the blades will be hanging out. Had a bad shot on an elk. Kind of hit it a little forward. It only got a couple inches of penetration. Would have it mattered if I would have had a fixed blade? I don't know. Maybe not. Just something in my mind now that I really trust these fixed blades. And like I said, I'm not shooting out to 80 yards or anything, so I can get these things to fly really good out to 40, no problem. So that's what I use, foolproof. Something else I feel like you should do on all your screws on your bow, put Loctite on them. Some type of a thread locker. I don't know, this is the red color, off-brand type stuff. It works fine. But you know, all these bolts on your rest, on your sight, your quiver adapter, all that stuff. I feel like you should put a little Loctite on there. That way nothing comes loose. You don't have to worry about it then. I've had stuff come loose on me. It's not fun. It makes a lot of noise. Just put a little bit of Loctite on things. Keeps everything nice and tidy. So something else that I like to do, once you got your bow tuned, if you can see that little mark I put on my cams, that's like a timing mark. Some bow manufacturers have them built in, but I just draw a line on my limb so I know if this cam rotates one way or the other, out of time, I'll know that something's not right with my bow, and you know, that mark will tell me it needs to be lined up with this limb, as you can see right there. I do the same exact thing with the back cam. If you really don't know much about bow tuning, I don't know, it may not be necessary to do that. I do the same thing with my wrist here. I put some timing marks on my wrist. That way if something would move on my wrist, I would know, because these marks are off. It's not very good, not clear on this picture because of it's just a black on black there, but just put a mark somewhere on your wrist so you know if it's moved or not. So I've shot in these limb-driven rests a lot. A number of brands I've shot in. This is a limb driver. It's a good Vapor Trail limb driver. It's a very good rest. Hamsky makes a very good limb-driven rest. I'm a fan of the limb-driven rest because they're kind of easy to maintain in the field. If something would happen to this cord, I just keep an extra piece of D-loop material somewhere on me. All you have to do is tie a new cord real quick and you're back up and running. Whereas sometimes with the cable-driven rest, you're kind of out of luck if that cable breaks or you know, comes apart or something. I've shot Whisker Biscuits in the past. I have nothing against them other than I think the arrow is kind of loud on them. And maybe it was just the one I had, but that's kind of what I felt like with the Whisker Biscuit. Was it just a little bit loud for my liking. Something else that I do, if you can see right there on my bottom of my D-loop, I tie a knocking point. What that's for is it's just that little black piece right there above that D-loop knot. What that is for, if something would ever happen to my D-loop, I have a reference point to retie one in the field real quick. That way, again, I try to make everything field friendly, I guess is what you would say. Just so that if something stupid would happen to this D-loop, I could tie a new one real quick and be up and running again in no time. And again, just carry a little piece of a long enough piece that you can tie your rest cord, or tie you up a D-loop. Again, if you don't know how to tie those knots, probably a good idea to learn if you're a bow hunter. So yeah, guys, that's my bow setup and how I kind of make it foolproof so it doesn't fail me. I've had them fail me a lot in my 20 years of hunting, and I feel like now I have it pretty well down pat to where nothing can go wrong, and if something does go wrong, I can fix it in the field. Something else I'd recommend doing, maybe keeping you an extra set of strings and cables on hand for your bow. Tell you a little story. About 4 years ago, my wife's bow blew up on her in the case right around October 30th, somewhere around Halloween. And don't have no idea what happened. We just opened the case and the string was cut. We got it into a shop to get the bowstring back on it. It took like a week. She missed the best part of hunting season there, that first week in November. So try to keep a backup string and cables. That way you don't have to get ones made for you. Just something to think about. It may be a good $100 to spend. You may think it's worthless right now, but you may be thankful you did during the rut when your bowstring breaks. Yeah, guys, let me know what you think about this video. I feel like it's something that doesn't get covered enough, so I wanted to do a video on it. Guys, subscribe to my channel if you would, please, and maybe share it with a friend. I really enjoy sharing information, and I like learning on this channel too. I learn just as much as I share. So see you guys on the next one.